Welcome, and thank you for joining The Logic of It All with your host, Reverend Gary Essex Sprunger.
Hello. Glad you could join in on the conversation. The last time we were talking about the use of labeling one another, and now seems like a good time to take that conversation to another level. Because we've been hearing a lot recently on the labels pro-Hamas, anti-Semitism, pro-Palestinian, but interestingly quiet is pro-Israel or pro-Jewish. Noted by its silence, nothing of significant support for its foundation is forthcoming from Christian voices for the other half of their Judeo-Christian heritage. Nothing, if little, by way of defense for those fellow children of God who are part of our heritage. Has Christianity fallen so low it cannot offer a counter voice to all the hatred toward Israel? Do we need the reminder that there is nothing in the Judeo-Christian scriptures that authorizes killing anyone who does not believe as a Jew or a Christian? That cannot be said for the other religion involved in the vitriolic language and actions seen happening on campuses in this magnificent country. We chase after and act on the labels we put on others. The result of being identified by a label, especially during the years before puberty, is that the child cannot grow into maturity without possibly being convinced by a teacher's coaching into believing what that label describes them to be. Not only is the individual then being harmed, possibly keeping them from reaching their creator-given potential, but at their being identified with a label, gives the political party, which fought against Lincoln's ending slavery, the opportunity to make political promises to all manner of labels as an appeal for an individual's vote from those who identify by that label. Those of that party of elitists who consider themselves above all others support an open border so they can continue their pattern of giving multiple costly freebies to those here illegally identified by that label, illegal immigrant, with promises more openly recently for immunity and citizenship, driver's license, and voting rights at the expense of legal taxpayer citizens for all the votes to keep them in power. Labels, regardless of their using words of concern for people, makes it easy for a political party to target groups with promises in their pandering for votes. So how does love your neighbor as yourself have any meaning in these conditions? Or do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Or the commandment to have no other gods before you, like the God of power and the God of ruling authority? Or thou shalt not steal, using taxpayer money to fund those labeled to have their votes with funds stolen from the well-being of legal taxpayers. Labeling is powerful and keeps us from being known as a child of God among other children of God. Labels, seeing a person only by their actions, their appearance, is being elevated to being all important in the movement to normalize their actions. Some Christian denominations have normalized those with their preferred same-sex activity and have allowed them to be ordained. The Pope has made it clear that none of that persuasion is to be ordained, elevated to a position of prominence, respect, and leadership in the Catholic faith where their actions can be misguidingly accepted as being normal. As to same-sex couples adopting children, the question remains, does their attempt to make their relationship normal by calling themselves a family give the child a view of life through their example that will guide them through puberty and finding their own identity? How does living with a same-sex couple affect a child growing through the sexual identity years? Will they accept what is unnatural as normal? And the same question can be raised in the marriage of a male and a female family. If there is disrespect, fighting, and abuse that a child is exposed to during those sexual identity years, is an abusive marriage to be considered normal by a developing child under those disrespectful circumstances? Same-sex couples use the argument that they are just as, if not more, loving than what is called a normal, natural marriage. A powerful argument, especially when there are so many news stories of an adult parent battering or drowning or running over with a vehicle an innocent child to death for an absurd reason. Now, because of your belief, if someone calls you homophobic, you may answer in kind, "You ignore the faith I believe in, so I am labeling you as a self-possessed, narcissistic hedonist wallowing in self-centered debauchery." So how do we move beyond the labels and name-calling to see another human so readily labeled, to know them as a child of God, as we all are? The value of human life must be restored. And to have that happen, floundering Christianity is in need of a reformation. The sanctity of life needs to be restored. As we can see in our country and the world, Christianity has lost its strong voice proclaiming the sacredness of life. Everyone needs to know, truly know, they are a child of God among all other children of God, regardless of their faith, color, ethnicity, nationality, sexual preference. A child of God first. And maybe the label won't be that significant in the scheme of life. And then again, there may come a defining point between living truly as a child of God in the world that the Creator has given us and living in the world we are trying to make as we want it to be for ourselves. Are we living in the Creator's world for us? Or are we living in a world that we are trying to make it be as we want it to be for us? Well, the world has revealed another archaeological discovery. Independent scholar of Near Eastern archaeology, Stephen Compton, using updated mapping techniques, claims to have found the Assyrian encampment grounds cited in Scripture, 2 Kings, Isaiah, and 2 Chronicles. Jerusalem was saved from an invading army when the Lord sent an angel who annihilated 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. If in the future there are to be excavations done, their bones may be found, which will corroborate the story. In previous episodes, we have discussed how the sources and storytellers use natural catastrophes as God's punishment for the sinful behavior of the Israelites and those who oppose them. If this location is the one referred to in the scriptural story, it will support the device used by the storytellers claiming disasters to be the punishing work of God against the Jewish adversaries. Here the storytellers say God sent an angel to kill the invading army that was threatening Jerusalem. The event might well have happened, and the storyteller gave it religious meaning, using an angel of the Lord to give it legitimacy. As we've discussed in previous episodes, these stories with angels were believed back in the time of the ancients, when knowledge consisted of myths, legends, superstitions, and belief in mythological gods. But logically and scientifically in these times, such an archaeological find will only support the widespread death of an army, not because of an avenging angel, but more logically, the result of a disease, virus, that took its toll. The storytellers of the Old Testament and New Testament are not clearly known. Repetitive sources like J, E, D, P in the Old Testament each have numerous authors over generations, as do the unidentified storytellers. Just as in the New Testament, known sources, Q, L, M, each are comprised of numerous authors spanning decades, as do the unknown storytellers. Who are those who authored the sources? And who were the storytellers? They have made reading and studying Scripture more difficult when we want truth right there on the page. Now, in these days, reading and studying Scriptures raises a lot of questions and wondering. We hunger for truth, religious truth. And that's the purpose of these episodes, to assure those who are not attending worship in the faith they proclaim is theirs, that there is much in the Bible that doesn't have to be believed as truth. That should not be a reason to stay away from worshiping and enjoying all that their faith offers. Let me share with you a book that is perhaps the closest we can come to the parable teachings of Jesus. It's a source known as Q. Can you see that? Source known as Q. It's titled The Lost Gospel Q, the Original Sayings of Jesus. We'll get into this and the man, Jesus, next time, but you're out of now, and the coffee's cold. Have a good rest of your day, and sunshine tomorrow.
Thank you for following The Logic of It All and the Hope for a Christian Reformation. If you have followed since episode 1, you're welcome to the website, thelogicofitall.com. Join us again for much, much more in The Logic of It All.